What is up, Niko Nation, and all the followers of the Draft Guys podcast with Peyton and Niko and your platform providers for podcasts? We're back here today with Division Draftables, episode number 2, the NFC North edition, of course. This is our NFL draft series that highlights the outlook of your favorite team in all 32 NFL teams as we transition out of the 2026 NFL draft cycle. We kind of look towards training camp and ultimately preseason football. I am your host, Niko Chambers. Niko, the draft guy. You can call me alongside my co-host, P Dunn. P Dunn, how's it going?
I'm good, man. I'm very excited for this one. I'm excited for all the division draft tools, but obviously this is the division with my team, the Chicago Bears, and all of the teams that I hate. And so I'm very excited to criticize everyone else's. Obviously not, but really excited for this one. Really fun division, really fun drafts. Really stoked.
If you haven't checked it out, check out episode 1. That's going to give you the breakdown of what Division Draftables truly is, what it means. Of course, episode 1 is NFC East edition. We're going to go through 8 episodes of this series, all the way through the AFC West, which will be episode number 8. But let's talk about it today. The NFC North is up in the air. We don't know who's going to win it. We'll start it off with the Detroit Lions. And we feel the same way about the Detroit Lions draft. It's a C plus. I shouldn't be that enthusiastic in my voice because it's not really a great grade. We're looking at what they do as a team. The biggest, I think, storyline going in is, has this window closed? How much longer with Jared Goff? Peter, you have the floor.
Yeah, that's kind of the thought process on why I gave it a C plus, is because it kind of seems like a lot of these picks they made are in a weird way drafting for this year, and they're not really drafting for long-term outlook. There's no upside picks here. There's no one here that has really high upside, and I just didn't love the philosophy. I didn't love the positions they targeted, and I just wasn't a big fan of the draft.
Yeah, man. I mean, the thing about the Lions, you look at the Lions even last year, what they did, they love reaching on some scheme fits. So we don't understand it as analysts. This is what they do every single year. They go out and they reach on players, but we got to kind of trust them because they are good at developing. However, I think taking Blake Miller at the 17th overall pick, when you had him, or at least I had him as a higher number 35 overall than a lot of people, was my 4th offensive tackle. And then Derek Moore at the round 2 slot in the 44 when he was a number 69 overall for me. I'll give you a little stats here. Okay. After Blake Miller was taken, who went? All right. Caleb Banks went right after to the Vikings. I would have liked Caleb Banks in this spot. Monroe Freeland, we mocked him there pretty frequently. He goes 19 to that Panthers team. Hakeem Mesidor going 22 would have been a perfect fit here going to this Lions team. And then Dylan Thieneman, I think, would have been a better fit. They have 2 injured safeties at the moment. He goes 25th overall to your Bears. But those are guys that went after Blake Miller. And then you look at Derek Moore. He went 44th overall right after Derek Moore. Zion Young, 45th overall to the Ravens. Isaiah Trotter, 46th. Jeremy Bernard, 47th, and Avion Terrell, 48th. So all those guys would have been better fit, honestly, but they end up going with the Michigan man in Derek Moore. Pete, are there any other hopes kind of later in this draft?
Keith Avenue is a great value. We'll talk about that in this next slide. I liked the value there. I liked the position they got him in. I thought he should have gone a lot higher. Both you and me were a lot higher on him. But yeah, the big thing with those 2 first picks is you take Blake Miller over some guys that we liked more, and then you took Derek Moore directly in front of Zion Young. Like did Blake Miller over Monroe Freeling, Derek Moore over Zion Young. Just not, I mean, they're the same prototypes. Both players are, and that's just you chose the wrong player in both spots, I think.
Yeah, we were not as high on this Detroit Lions team in total. If we're going to about to look at it with all of the over under win totals. If you haven't checked it out, check out our latest snap count on the schedule release. We'll talk to you about how we really feel about that Lions team, but that didn't even account for this NFL draft. And then they don't have a great one. We'll move on here to their depth chart, kind of looking at some pieces. The one thing that stands out to me is Derek Moore the edge number 2 next to Aiden Hutchinson?
I guess so. I'm not sure who else would take that spot. And so I guess they drafted him to, they really did have a hole at that other defensive end position. And I think they filled it with a player who I think is a higher floor. But again, that's kind of the conversation we're going to have with Blake Miller too, is you just drafted a player because you haven't needed that position and you didn't really get a player that is a high upside player. You got a player that has a high floor. And I'm not sure how high that upside is at both of those positions.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I think we do have to look at their offensive line. They're bringing in Cade Mays. They bring in Juice Scruggs. Larry Borum is there. Blake Miller slotted at the right tackle slot. Is that where you foresee him, at least for the future?
Absolutely. They drafted him. I think their thought process was, okay, Penei Sewell is going to move to left tackle. We need a right tackle. And I guess that's kind of why they passed on Monroe Freeling, because he is a true left tackle, and Blake Miller has played right tackle for all of his career at Clemson. And so I think that's why they drafted him to be in that position. But again, it just feels like drafting when you are forced, putting yourself in a position as a general manager where you have to pick a position and you have to pay a player at that position isn't how you draft. That's not the best way to do it. And they really shoebox themselves in here with both of those first two picks. And I don't think it's going to end up very good.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a good quarterback class anyway to take one, but you got to start thinking internal clock with the Jared Goff situation. Obviously, we weren't very high, or at least you weren't, on the Isaiah Pacheco move to supplement Jahmyr Gibbs. I think, mocked, Jadarian Price there and just some other players who could have went. Obviously, we didn't have one running back selected in round two at all, and then we had one in round three that ended up being Kalen Black. That was a terrible pick. We'll talk about him way later in the NFC West segment, but they could have gone a running back and they didn't. I'm kind of a little shocked by what they did. Pete, we'll talk about your superlative five here.
Yeah, favorite pick was Keith Abney because I just love the value they got from him. We talked about it, the best value spot too. I think it was a really good value, and I think he was a player that they got at a good spot that I think is going to be able. And again, in a corner room that is kind of depleted, kind of injured, he's going to be able to play there. Top sleeper is going to be Derek Moore, just because I think he does have the upside of the upside of filling that role. I don't think he has the upside of being very good at it long term. However, I think he could be. I don't think a lot of people viewed him as a day one starter, and I do view him as a day one starter. And then year one impact is going to be Blake Miller at right tackle, just because that's where he's going to play. He's a plug and play right tackle, which really just sounds like a good thing. But again, I'm just not sure that he's going to be a very high level player at that position for a long time.
Yeah, man, I don't know. They reached on one of my favorite players, Tyleik Williams, last year, and they're reaching on Blake Miller this year. I don't know how I feel about it. We'll move into mine really quickly. I feel the same about Keith Abney. I think that he's my favorite pick and he's the best value. You look at value. What does value mean? He's number 73 overall on my board. He's the cornerback 10, and he goes round five, 157, and he's the 18th cornerback selected. I mean, that is what, 50, 60, 70 slots than where he should be. I mean, that's unbelievable that they get him and he could fit the role that I think will fit him best in the slot. That's actually where we had, at least I had him ranked as a slot cornerback. I think he can be a true slot cornerback, but he can also be one of those other big cornerbacks with Arnold, of course, DJ Reed. While they have him over there, of course, draft time. And I do think that Blake Miller will have a good career for the Lions, the best career out of all the guys that they drafted. However, I just don't like the reach on him, but he will ultimately be the year one impact. Derek Moore, same feelings, top sleeper. I actually was super high on him, a lot more than you were. However, I don't know how I feel about it. So, Pete, I'll have to ask you, Lions, how do you feel about them in their NFC North chances this season?
Not great. They're very firmly in fourth place, in my opinion, in this division. I think they're the worst roster. Um, I think they have the worst head coach in the division. I think I just I think they might. I think they have the third best quarterback, but an aging Jared Goff. I think there's a big gap between him and the top two guys, and Jordan Love and obviously Caleb Williams. And I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope for this team this year. I don't have a lot of hope for this team over the next few years.
Of course, we have hope for this next team that's about to come up. However, they continue to stack really, really bad drafts. It's, of course, going to be the Green Bay Packers. We are not high on it. Pete hates it. I mean, I don't understand, man. And of course, you have to, write down the note. They don't have a first round pick for the Micah Parsons trade. So you got to kind of factor that in a little bit. Maybe I did factor that in to my grading a little bit. However, I just don't like what they did. They only had six picks. I'm finally happy to tell you that they finally did something with their cornerback room, which that is great. They've needed that for years, ever since they, had that reach for Stokes, which was a terrible pick. He's on a different team now. But you have what you have here, Pete. How do you feel about this Green Bay Packers draft strategy?
Yeah, truth be told, this started off as a D for me, and I did move it to a C minus just because I really do like the Cisse and Damani Jackson picks. I think those were both great, really good picks for the range they were in, and players that I think are going to play for them this season. I was higher on Damani Jackson than you were, and really, really loved the value they got there. So that's kind of the differentiating factor between me. But man, this is a bad draft class.
I mean, you look at Danny Dennis Sutton, that's the only other guy that I can think of. Everybody else is not ranked on my board. I do think Chris McClellan can have a little bit better of a pull in terms of what he can do on this depth chart. We'll look at the depth chart right away here. The big thing that stands out to me, man, I mean, you're looking at it, I do see the updated cornerback room. So, Pete, how do you think this is going to shake out? You have Nixon here, who's kind of that fringe starter, always holds place in terms of what they need, but it's been eminent that he's kind of out the door. So how do you feel of how these new guys fit in?
Yeah, I think both of them will take over, maybe as starters by the end of the season. I love the upside for both of the players. The athlete Cisse is, the ball skills and man coverage Damani Jackson has. I think both of those guys are. I will say Damani Jackson's not really their type as the type of corner they look at. So I thought it was really interesting that that was who they wanted to take in this spot. But again, defensive coordinator's out the door, and the Packers type was Chris Johnson. He went way earlier, and so they didn't have a chance to get him. And so I think there's a real opportunity for them to take over and play very quickly in the season.
Man, how bad was that pick, man? That Chris Johnson pick. We'll talk about him in the NFC, in the AFC side of it. He done hated it. I mean, that'll be episode 5 for us, but man, that was bad. But one thing that's bad that I look at this roster, they did nothing on the offensive side of the ball. You bring in Skylar Moore, you bring in Tyrod Taylor. Those are throwaway guys that you kind of have to fill the roster with. You did nothing to get kind of a backup running back after Emmanuel Wilson ultimately goes to Seattle. Marshawn Lloyd, I guess you're hoping that, man, maybe he can make the jump, but he's been hurt these last few years. I mean, Peyton, you have that jumbled up receiver room with the guy that I don't think is going to be good, Matthew Golden. What hope do you have for this offense?
Well, your hope is that, to talk about Matthew Golden, we are the two opposite ends of the Matthew Golden spectrum, you and me are. But he really did, when they decided to throw him the football in those playoffs, he really did look really good. And there was definitely flashes of, okay, I get why you spent a first round pick on him, because they didn't utilize him the right way those first 18 games of the season. And so maybe if they can tap into the way that they should be using him, he actually has an opportunity to be the player that he's supposed to be. You have just a lot of guys, just guys in that room right now, and somebody needs to take over as the number one. Christian Watson can't stay healthy. Jaden Reed's a slot receiver, and Matthew Golden is the only guy that has the opportunity to be better, but he wasn't during the regular season last year. So
You look at the 3-4 that they're running, some of the guys that they got. I really like Javon Hargrave coming into this nose tackle slot. I do think, like I said, Chris McClellan is going to play a major role, but I do think that it's important to note that he went 77th overall, right? You got some other guys who went after him that are defensive tackles. So you have Big Citrus, Dom Orange went 82nd overall. Darrell Jackson Jr. went 103. Caleb Proctor went 104. And Grayson Halton went 107. All those guys would fit into this scheme fit better than Chris McClellan does. Not a big fan of what they did here. We'll move on to P. Dunn's 5 superlatives.
yeah, obviously love Damani Jackson. I think the value that you got with him, the range that you got him in, I think was awesome. I think he's going to be a couple of years from now. I think he has a chance to be the best corner on this team, which is why I have him as my draft diamond. Best value is going to be Brendan Cisse. I love the range that they got him in. They knew they needed to go corner. The fact that they got him at that range, I didn't think he was going to make it to them. He did. Top sleeper, McClellan, just because I think he has an opportunity to play on that interior, that 3-4 system. I think he has a role to be carved out for himself. And Cisse, year one impact, I think he starts day one as the number one corner on that team. Damani Jackson, I think, is going to need some time to ramp up. I don't think Cisse does. I think you throw him into the fire, and hopefully he can make it work for you out there at corner.
He's one of those more developmental guys. However, he's got the traits. He's got the prototypical size. Hopefully, you can build off that. I'll talk about him really quickly. He's my favorite pick. No question about it. Same feelings about the year one impact that he's going to have. He's really cornerback one as of right now. And that's such an interesting thing to say, if you will. I do think when we look back at this draft in 5 years, Chris McClellan will be the guy who kind of gets the most buzz because he's just going to play the most. And he's going to have probably some of the higher impact than any of their guys. But in terms of best value, man, Dennis Sutton, 84th overall prospect on my board. Defensive end number 13, and he goes in round 4, 120th overall. That's pretty good value, man, if you go 40 slots where you kind of should have on my big board. Top sleeper, talked about McClellan. He's going to be there for me. P. Dunn, what type of hope do you have for this Packers team? Their line total is 10.5 for their wins. How do you decipher where they stand in the NFC North after the draft?
Yeah, I'm biased, but I really don't think this team is going to be that much different, if not worse, than it was last year. I think a lot of the holes they had They tried to fix that secondary. I think it's going to take time. And again, you took swings on guys that are both pretty developmental, and there's a chance that they both don't work out. And so I don't know. You really didn't get any difference makers either in free agency or the draft. Not sure how much better this team's going to get than it was last year. So not a lot of hope right now for the Packers.
Tied for the third hardest schedule in the NFL at 538. Based on those 2025 records, you're going to have a gauntlet that they're going to have to go through, including their own division. And we got some teams in this division who kind of aren't really looked at on that 2025 record schedule, but they're going to be good. And we'll talk about one right here, the Minnesota Vikings. Peyton, man, you give him an A minus. You got to talk to me.
Yeah, I really liked this draft. I love the decisions they made. Obviously, they took my favorite player in the draft, Caleb Banks, the number 5 player on my big board, the number 1 defensive tackle. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I think he's a really, really good football player. If you've listened to us over the draft cycle, I talked about him for hours. I could talk about him for more hours. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Jake Golday, love the way he fits in. I think a lot of the picks that they made, I think are good, going to be good now and going to be good down the road. That's a really great philosophy to have. And as the weird part about being in between general managers, I think they did a great job of taking a big swing on Caleb Banks and then taking some really high floor players after that.
Yeah, man, I'll go into the Caleb Banks thing because obviously they've gotten mixed reviews, but let's look at really the draft board and what they could have taken instead. So, of course, right before them, Owane goes 14th. Of course, Ruben Bain goes 15th. Sadiq goes 16th. Those are guys that I think if they were on the board for the Vikings at 18, they would have selected. However, then you have some other people on the board. Maybe Dylan Thieneman, we've seen him mocked here a ton. He went 25th. Peter Woods was something that we saw also mocked here. He went 29th. Cedric Folk could have been a good fit, 31. Jadarian Price, 32. That would have probably been way too early for him. And then Avion Terrell, excuse me, going 48th overall. So of those guys, like, how much better could they have really done? They did the right thing and they took a player that, while it ain't popular at the moment, it's going to do really good wonders for them. And then they pair that with a true nose tackle, Dom Orange. Obviously, I thought that Caleb Banks could be a generational nose tackle throughout this draft cycle. However, you're not going to need to really do that with him right now. You can just have him kind of get back to full health, back to full strength, if you will, and he's going to really play that defensive tackle slot while Dom Orange goes in there, does some good things. I'm a big, big, big fan of the guy that they got, round 6, pick 198, Damon Claiborne. He's going to be a player for them. I gave him a B plus. I was teetering between the B and the B plus range. They had a lot of picks. They did miss on a few of those kind of back 5, if you will, besides Claiborne. We'll move in here to the depth chart, really looking at what they could do. The big takeaway for this depth chart, you bring in Kyler Murray. You have a quarterback battle now where you had 3 quarterbacks playing last year, and they got to 9 wins. So what does Kyler Murray bring to this team? Is he going to be the starter week 1?
I do think he's going to be the starter week 1. I think he takes over as the starter. I think he's going to have a Sam Darnold-esque season and then go somewhere else when JJ McCarthy maybe is the guy the year after that. You're going to have to try and figure out how to make him work, but they might just cut their losses. If Kyler Murray has a great season, he might be the guy for them for the future. Either way, no matter who wins the job, it's going to be a better situation because not only do you have 2 guys, you have 2 guys that made each other better. Whoever wins that job is going to win it because they earned it.
Do you feel that Caleb Banks, obviously he's slotted in here as that 3-4 defensive end? Is that a position that Caleb Banks can play? Do you see him more as the defensive tackle here? He's not going to be the nose tackle with Dom Orange there and some of the other guys, but like, how do you feel Caleb Banks fits into the equation?
Yeah, I think he could play defensive end just because of the athlete he is. However, I think he'll absolutely play more on the inside of this team, either at the defensive tackle or nose tackle spot. I think they're going to move around these guys so much that you aren't really going to see a specific spot stayed at for him. However, you just want to get him on the field, and no matter where he ends up, I think he's going to get that's going to make an impact for this team.
I absolutely love how Jake Goldday stacks up. They, of course, run the 2 interior linebackers, if you will. You have Eric Wilson. He's been there for a long time. Blake Cashman, Ivan Pace. He really is a true middle linebacker. However, he can play one of these spots. I think he's going to be the starter day 1 for one of these spots. You look, they added Jawan Jennings. Really good signing there. I like Caleb Tiernan and how he fits in at that backup left tackle slot. Big thing, P. Dunn, you got this new running back room revamped, if you will. We thought Aaron Jones would be a cap casualty. You have Jordan Mason, of course, Damon Claiborne. How do you think the shares will line up?
I don't know. I'm not very high on this running back room. I think that Claiborne, again, anytime you get a rookie in a bad running back room, they tend to take over. And I think there's a real opportunity for that 6th round pick to be the guy by the end of the year.
That would be awesome to see. We'll move into the superlatives for Pete.
Yeah, very, very simply, favorite pick is going to be Caleb Banks. He's my favorite player in the draft. Pretty simple with that one. Didn't need to think about it a lot. Best value is also Caleb Banks. Draft diamond, Caleb Tiernan. I think if Caleb Banks didn't go to this team, Tiernan would have been my favorite pick. I love that they got him in the range that they got him in. He was one of my favorite players, prospects over this cycle. I think he's really, really good. I love the way he played that offensive tackle position. I think he could take over at either left or right, depending on what Darisaw's future is. They've done a really great job of building that offensive line, and they got another really good one there. Top sleeper, I'm going to talk about it some more. It's going to be Claiborne. I know you're going to talk about him in your next segment. It's a guy, again, really do think he could take over that room by the end of the year. Year one impact is going to be Gold Day. I wanted to put Banks, but just because of the injury history, not really sure how he's recovering from that foot injury. Year one impact, Gold Day is going to play immediately on that linebacker position. They've got such a great linebacker room. I think he could come in and contribute immediately. I think he's going to be impactful very early on in his career.
I think anytime you take a middle linebacker, he just has to be in contention for that year one impact slot, especially within the first 2 rounds. We'll move on here to what I believe after a B plus rated draft. My favorite pick is Dom Orange. I think that they needed a nose tackle. They get a true nose tackle. He's going to consume 2 gaps. He's going to do a bunch of different things. It's super cool to see, but there's no question about it, though, when it comes to draft diamond. When we look back at this class in 5 years, he doesn't even have to be on the team. He's going to be the best player out of this draft class, the guys that they got, however many it was. It'll be super cool to see. Best value, Damon Claiborne, man. My RB8 in this class, and this was a really weird year for the running back. A bunch of things happened where they weren't that great of a running back class, but I think he stands out as one of those lower ranked guys on my list. 115th overall prospect for me. He goes round 6, 198. So you take him 80 spots after where he should have been. That's absolutely best value. Top sleeper Tiernan, same feelings. I think that he can fill in as a really good backup tackle for the moment. He can develop into a starter. Year one impact, say no more. Jake Goldday. We'll move into this right here, P. Dunn. This team won 9 games with 4 quarterbacks last year. They finally have a franchise quarterback, or at least one that you would consider more kind of better for the job. How do you feel about where they stack up in this division?
Really good. I think this is the second best team in the division, but I think this is a better team than the Packers right now. If they can get three-fourths of what they got from Kirk Cousins, man, I think this could be a really good team. You tap into Jay Jettas again, you tap into Hawkinson again. Defense looks incredible. I mean, I really like what they did.
It's going to be tough, man, to beat. And of course, they're at an interesting line at 8.5. We'll talk about that a little bit later here. But it's time, Pete Dunn. Tell me about your draft. The Chicago Bears are on the clock. We both gave them B minuses. So not the greatest draft, but it's your team. So you have the floor.
Yeah, I would love to be as excited as I was last year about this team in this draft class. Not that high on it. I mean, truly, I don't love the Phenom pick. I didn't love the player. The more I think about it, the more I hear about it. I'm a little bit higher on it than I was at first. I like the way he's going to play over the top of that defense. I think he fits well into what they do. Logan Jones, a guy that, truth be told, like I didn't know that much about coming into the cycle, but the more I hear about him, the way he played at Iowa. This is a guy that I think had injury history struggles, but when he was healthy was unbelievable and played really, really good football. So taking a swing on a center, especially one that has the upside that Logan Jones does, I'm happy with. Sam Roush, I guess this is a Cole Kmet replacement. I guess that means that they kind of feel they're going to move on from him. They play the same role. Obviously, Colson Loveland isn't going anywhere, and so that means you're not drafting a third tight end in the 3rd round unless you have a plan for it only to be 2 by the end of the year. So I'm assuming that's what that means. Xavier Thomas, shared my thoughts on that before. Wasn't super high on it. Malik Muhammad, we're going to get into that in a couple slides. Love that pick. But overall, I wish we would have established defensive tackle a little bit more. I wasn't too high on the positions we went after and the positions we got at the ranks we went. Like in the 1st round, didn't really want to go safety there. I wish we would have gone defensive tackle. Just a lot of things that I think we left on the board that I wish we would have gone different directions. But it wasn't a terrible draft. We got some good football players in there, and that's why I ended up at a B minus for me.
Yeah, we'll go down the same list here. What I feel about them, I think when you look at Dylan Thieneman, he went 25th, obviously. what could you have done differently? There's only one player really on the list that you could have done differently. That's going to be Peter Woods, who went
Yep,
29th overall.
for
To that
sure.
Chiefs team, we mocked him there constantly. We also mocked Caleb Banks there, but obviously Banks went early. So that's going to be the one thing I could see a toss up. I still give it an A minus for that pick specifically, but we'll go down the list and you're going to want to look away, P. Dunn, because obviously Logan Jones, he was the first center taken in this draft class over Slaughter, who went 63, over Lou, who went 128. So you missed on Lou about three times in terms of the picks that you had. Not going to like that one. We'll go to Sam Roush here. And if you're going to take a tight end, okay, that's the only logic I can think of. It's going to have to be the guy who comes after Komet. However, there's an opportunity to get a really good blocking tight end. You had two that were on the board after the 69th overall pick. That would be Oscar Delp at 73 and Eli Raridon at 95. You missed on
Oh,
both of them. You could have really had Raridon in this system. It could have been really great. Xavier Thomas, man, there were a bunch of guys that you could have went instead.
yeah.
Chris Bell maybe would have been a better pick at number 94 overall than 89. You could have went Jermod McCoy. Obviously, he went early fourth. You could have went Darrell Jackson Jr. if you wanted that defensive tackle at 103. Caleb Proctor, one of your guys at 104 on my board. Skylar Bell, 125. All those guys would have been better fits for this Bears team than Xavier Thomas, unfortunately. But the light at the end of the tunnel is that Malik Muhammad pick. We'll move in to their depth chart. And Pete, tell me about what they did this offseason.
Yeah, it was honestly a lot of plugging holes. I actually really like what they did on the defensive side of the ball mostly. I love the way they reworked the safety room. I think that safety room, you had a lot of question marks last season. Honestly, the outlook over the next 3 years for that safety room is really good. Like really, really good. I love what they got in Kobe Bryant. Dylan Thieneman, I think, is going to improve a lot and fill that role really well. Devin Bush, I like the contract. We talked about it before, is a really good value for the money for another linebacker to get in that room. Didn't really love what they did on the offensive side of the ball. Khalif Raymond is not going to start on this team. That would be a disaster if he's a starting slot receiver on this team. But again, I don't know where else we're going to go. It feels like a couple of years ago that you talked about, wow, this Bears team is really stacked at receiver, and now it seems a little thin. So I don't know.
They had one big need, defensive tackle. They did nothing really to address it. None of those guys that they brought in, Katavius Street, Neville Gallimore, none of those guys, even Jordan Vandenberg, one of the later guys that they got in the draft, none of those guys are going to make an impact the way that a Peter Woods could have, maybe if you take away Thieneman. But I really like Thieneman and Kobe Bryant together. That's going to be really good. You get Devin Bush, you get that true middle linebacker. Really, really good there. I don't know, man, but I think if you're a Bears fan, you're looking at that secondary, man, and you have Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, and Malik Muhammad. That is lockdown. And then you pair it with the safeties now. That is a lockdown secondary. You're going to have a hard time. Teams are going to have a very, very, very hard time dealing with them. I really like it. We'll move on here to Pete Dunn's five.
Yeah, Logan Jones has just grown on me so much throughout this process. The more I've heard, Bears analysts talk about him, I think it's the Slaughter and Lou conversations are understandable. Logan Jones, I feel like has the most upside out of the three, and I'm comfortable taking that with the pieces we have around him on that offensive line. Draft Diamond, Malik Muhammad, best value. I absolutely love the pick. I love the player. Thought he should have been, had a second, third round grade on him. Can't believe he went at the range he did. Absolutely love what he does in man coverage. Just a monster in man coverage. Sam Roush, top sleeper. I think once Cole Kmet is out the door, I think this guy has an opportunity to really take over as that inline tight end. Him and Loveland just play completely different positions. It feels wrong calling them both tight ends. And then Thieneman, year one impact. He's going to start at safety. He's going to be really good at safety. No brainer there.
All day long. I feel the same way about Dylan Thieneman being my year one impact. I just think that obviously you take him round one and you miss on round two, round three, and round three picks. You're going to have to be the year one impact on my board. Favorite pick and draft diamond as well. Really like what that for him. Of course, Malik Muhammad, best value, man. We loved Malik Muhammad, one of our most mocked players when we did our 3 round mock draft series. 57th overall prospect on my big board. Cornerback at number 8, if you will. And he goes round 4, number 124. So what is that? That is 70 slots later than he should have. Of course, he was the 15th cornerback taken, cornerback 8 on my board. Like, just you can see it together, man. I mean, I just think that he's going to be a lockdown, and they already have lockdown. So learn from the best. Get to see some really good football from him. Top sleeper Logan Jones. I feel the same way. I think when Drew Dahlman, kind of that surprise retiring, if you will. I think that he can kind of fill that center role. I do think he's going to stick at center. I don't think he's going to play an interior offensive guard position, but it will be interesting to see. Peyton, I got to ask you the storyline. It's going to be funny that I asked you this. Was last year a fluke, or are they just starting to relive being at the top of the NFC North?
Yeah, I absolutely think that the best is yet to come. I mean, it was really year one. I mean, obviously it was year one of Ben Johnson, but it was really year one of Caleb Williams as well. This was the first year he fully had his feet underneath of him. It's only up from here. Luther Burden is going to continue to contribute. Colston Lovin's going to continue to contribute. Remo Dunze is going to they're going to figure out how to use him in this offense. I think it's only the best is yet to come for this Bears team, I think.
Very, very interesting. We'll move on here to the final segment. Off-season winners and losers. Pete, you know this division better than anybody. Who do you really think won the NFC North this offseason?
Yeah, the Vikings very clearly won the NFC North this offseason. I think they had the best draft. I love what they did, both in the combination of free agency. Honestly, unfortunately, it wasn't really that much competition for them, though. I can make an argument for all three of the other teams to be the losers. But the Vikings definitely had a really good offseason.
I think I would honestly pinpoint Lions or Packers, Pete. I don't know, man. I'm conflicted.
Yeah, it's bad. It's choosing between Dumb and Dumber over here. I cannot believe that they both made such terrible decisions, both in the draft and free agency process. Gun to my head, I'm probably going to choose the Lions just because I really don't love what they did. But boy, the Packers draft was terrible. Such a bad draft.
Rough, man. We'll look at the 2026 win totals. Pete, I'll start with you. Packers over under 10.5 wins.
I'll take the under. I think that the team is going to regress from where they were last year. Simply, they did not add enough talent to that room on either side of the ball to upgrade from what they did. Having to replace the defensive coordinator, I think, is going to be a bigger change than what they're expecting. And they just didn't add anything on either side of the ball to make me think they're going to get better.
I just think that, yeah, I think it's a sneaky 10-win season. That's about it. I don't think they can get over that half. I can also make a case for 9 wins. I will also go the under on that Packers team. We'll move to that second team in this division, which it's crazy to me that the odds makers are going to put the Lions over the Bears considered last year, but we'll talk about it here. 10.5 is the line over under for this Lions team. Pete, what are you going to do?
So the line could be 7.5, and I would take the under on it for this Lions team. I really don't think it's going to be a good season. I cannot believe that Vegas is willing to lose money the way they are by putting them at 10.5. It honestly shocks me. They have the wrong two teams at 10.5, in my opinion. I think they have the fourth worst team and the third worst team at the two best odds. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think the only thing that we can put together that kind of makes sense because the rosters are in two separate places is that the Lions do have the easiest schedule and the Bears do have the hardest schedule. So that could be the only thing that kind of throws a wrench into it. But you have to consider that a lot of the hardest schedule talk is coming from this division when you got to
Yeah.
play all teams that were over 9 wins. So we'll look here at this Bears team, 9.5. This is going to be contradicting, and this is probably stupid that I even asked you. 9.5 over under, Pete.
Hammering the over very clearly. I think this team is going to win 10 games for sure. 11, 12 game season, I think, is absolutely in the cards. I think this team, like I said, best is yet to come. Cannot wait to see what Ben Johnson is going to do with this team this year.
Very, very easily over as well. I will hammer that one. That's super low for them. I can definitely see them getting to 10 wins and above. We'll finally move on to this Vikings team. New KOC with, of course, Kyler Murray. Can that pairing get them over or under 8.5 wins?
Again, hammering the over here. Definitely think this team's, if they won 9 games last year, they are for sure winning 9 games this year. Feels really silly to have this line at this spot. And so I'm definitely going to take the over here as well.
Give me your prediction for the NFC North come December time. What do you think the ranks are going to be? Who do you think is going to be in first? Who do you think is going to be in last? And who do you think is going to be between?
Yeah, I think the Bears are going to be on top of this division with the Vikings slightly behind them. And then I think there's going to be a gap between the Vikings and the Packers, and there's going to be a large gap between the Packers and the Lions. I think the Lions are really, really going to have a down year, and they need to have a full reset after this season. Maybe time to move on from Jared Goff. Maybe Jared Goff's a Viking next year. I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be the Lions this year.
Very, very interesting. We thank you guys so much for tuning in to Division Draftables, seeing how we feel about this NFC North division. And it's going to be fun as we obviously do it for every team and every division in the NFL. All 8 episodes, you're going to want to check those out on Niko the Draft Guy on YouTube. And of course, the Draft Guys podcast with Peyton and Niko on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube podcasts. We thank you guys so much for tuning in.